Hello, and thank you for taking the time to view this recording. The purpose of this recording is to provide an overview of installing and configuring pdfDocs. Not every single item will be covered in this recording, so please review the administrator and advanced user guides if you are unable to find what you are looking for. First, you'll want to ensure the prerequisites are installed. The first three listed are available to download from the Customer Center or portal. Note that if you have Windows 10, the requirement of Microsoft.NET Framework is already installed. All of these need to be installed prior to pdfDocs. First, we'll review the standard individual workstation install and configuration. So here I have downloaded the installer. I put it in a location. That's not my downloads folder. It is recommended that you put it in a location that's not your downloads folder, as your downloads folder sometimes gets wiped out. And these are the prerequisites that are already installed. So I'll go ahead and double click on the installer. Next. Accept the license. Next. By default, pdfDocs will install to C program files x86. pdfDocs is a 32-bit application, but it does support Windows 64-bit and also Office 64-bit. DMS context menu. This is the right-click menu within your document management system. OCR desktop. Office integration. This will install a DocsCorp ribbon in Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. And within that ribbon, it will have a pdfDocs section with any of the functionality available for pdfDocs for you to use. Outlook add-in. This is an add-in that will allow users who are sending documents that are not PDF. It will prompt them if they want to convert it to PDF on the fly, or you can configure it to always convert documents to PDF. Explorer context menu. This is the right click in Windows Explorer. pdfDocs 3. This is off by default. You will only use this if you are upgrading from pdfDocs 3, as it installs a tool that you will use to convert pdfDocs 3 organizers to pdfDocs 4. Interactive learning by Capensis. This is a very useful tool for end users to have some interactive learning within pdfDocs. Display PDF in Internet Explorer. If your organization is no longer using Internet Explorer, you'll want to have this feature not installed. If your organization is using Internet Explorer, it will allow you to view the PDF within the browser. Preview PDF in Windows Explorer. So this allows you to view the PDF in the Windows Explorer preview pane, but also if you want to view the PDF in the Outlook preview pane, you will want to install this option. So next. This is the multi-user settings section. So default settings in central config. By default, it will automatically set this to the same location that you installed pdfDocs from. If you want it to be a different location, and if you want the configuration that you're going to deploy to your end users, you'll go ahead and browse to whatever network location you want. auto update from this location. Enable this if you want end users to be prompted for the next version and they can install it themselves. So what will happen is we'll say there's a pdfDocs 4.10 that comes out in like 6 months to a year. You'll drop it in the same location. It has to be in this location, and the users have to have access, sufficient access to install software on their machine. So you're dropping the MSI here. Within 24 hours, the end user will open pdfDocs. There will be a prompt that asks them if they want to upgrade pdfDocs, yes or no. They click on yes, and it will upgrade for them, meaning that it will uninstall the previous version and install the new version. Again, end users have to have the ability to install software to utilize this feature. Okay, click next, and then we're going to install. So let's talk about Citrix Terminal Server or remote desktop installs. Like other software, you're going to make sure end users are not logged on to the server. You're going to log on as administrator and install via the add remove programs. Each logged on user will use 1 GB of RAM on the server. So just consider this when you're looking at memory for your server. And I'll also mention that the changes that you created it hasn't been created yet. I'll show you that in a second. So notice that pdfDocs created this pdfDocs_config. This is used for deployment purposes. This is now my central config area, this folder. And now I'm finished. So what I wanted to show you before is that the options, refresh, are in Docs Corp here, pdfDocs, and all the options that you set, PD3 App 0, Outlook add-in, Office add-in, here's the central config. You may and when we go to license the software, it will also be populated in the registry. So now we have pdfDocs installed. Let's go ahead and open it up. It's going to tell us that the license is invalid. It's actually not licensed. So let's go ahead and get that license. The license information is available on the portal or customer center. And I think I mentioned this, but I may not have. The Capensis e-learning, you installed it. We opted to have it installed, but if I don't license it, you're not going to be able to use it. So you want to make sure the license is there. Okay, this happens to be a trial license, so if you're trialing pdfDocs, you will see this. This will be prompted. Just close that. And now pdfDocs is ready to use. So It comes installed with the most common configuration by default. So there's not a lot you need to change. We do have options in there if you want to utilize them, but I'm going to highlight some of the most common options you need to consider. So under General, there is a do not create bookmarks and hyperlinks. So I mentioned earlier with the Office add-in, there is a Docs Corp ribbon that's added to the Office products. So if I type something in here and select Open in PDF Docs, it will convert it to PDF. Now, if this happens to be a hyperlink, because of this setting saying do not create hyperlink bookmarks and hyperlinks, it will just come over as the text you see. It will not come over as a hyperlink. So depending on your practice, you need to consider how you want this configured. Or if you want to leave it up to the user, this can be done in training. But you can have it bookmarks using headings and hyperlinks. Import and open options. This PDF Docs utilizes something called an organizer. By default, the organizer will go to see users, whatever the username is, and documents. And then my organizers folder is created. Some organizations will want to have these organizers on a network. They can become quite large. An organizer is a workspace or a container that contains documents from emails, documents from document management systems, documents from an H drive. And users bring them into the organizer, edit them, highlight them, redact them, and then the result is a collated PDF. So your organization can control where the default organizers are, and this is where that happens. Binder. If you're utilizing Binder, you'll want to extract attachments when adding MSG files to a Binder project. Integration. PDF Docs automatically detects what document management system you have installed and configures for it. But it's always good to go in and check and make sure, because this is not enabled for whatever reason. So I'm going to enable it. Let's say it doesn't have my document management system. So you can uncheck this, click on Add, and add the document management system that you want. Okay, so then the next is Outlook. We installed the Outlook add-in, the one that converts to PDF on the fly when someone sends a non-PDF attachment, but it's not configured. It's installed, but it's not configured. So you have to configure it here. You can always convert the documents to PDF or prompt to convert the document to PDF. And then page display, optimized for interactivity. You're going to want to check this if you happen to work with a lot of vector-based PDF, meaning architectural drawings. This, if you check this, it'll work much better for you. And yes, so I've configured PDF Docs. There's not a lot of changes that I need to make. And then I click OK. And you see Net Documents appears. I'm going to close PDF Docs. And when I do that, the configuration is written to the user's app data roaming PDF Docs config. This is something to keep in your back of your mind as we go to the next section. Also, please reference section 3.1 in the Advanced User Guide for any of the configuration changes I haven't mentioned that you're looking for. Like I said, I only went over, I highlighted one of the most common ones because pdfDocs was installed with a common configuration by default. So, automated install. This section is for those installs where you won't be sitting in front of the workstation and performing the install yourself. So we'll be discussing command line install using MSI parameters and how to deploy the features of the custom setup we just reviewed. This is an example of an installation script. I've highlighted those that you will need to consider. Default PDF app equals 1. So this sets pdfDocs as the Windows default PDF application. If you do not want pdfDocs to be the Windows default PDF application, do not include this in the installation script. Central config. This is the path for the central config folder and files. And the end user needs read access to this location. Central config auto update, we mentioned this earlier. 0 is not enabled, 1 is enabled. Setup user configuration equals 0. This means the installer will explicitly exclude user setting creation. User setting creation is down here, and this has to do with the custom setup. So if you set setup user configuration to 1, that means the installer will explicitly include user setting creation. So Word startup location. If your Word startup location is anything other than the default, which is app data roaming Microsoft Word startup, then you need to specify where that is. The reason being, there is a file called pdfDocs.dot that is put down during the install in the default location of pdfDocs. So, default location of Word. So, if your Word startup location has not been changed, it's not customized, you don't even need to put that in there. Just omit it. So, add local. This does get put on after this over here, but I separated it for clarity. So Capensis, if you install the e-learning Capensis, include that. PD3 app, if you're not upgrading from pdfDocs 3 to pdfDocs 4, take this out. IE preview, if you are not using Internet Explorer any longer, take that out. And shell preview, if you want to be able to preview PDFs in Outlook, please include that. So deploying the configuration. Deploying the configuration involves a central configuration path, I've mentioned that a few times, and a master machine. So best practice. The best practice is to install pdfDocs on what I call a master machine. So you have it installed on one machine. You configure everything you can through the user interface under options that we just went over a little while ago. Then you'll copy the files from the end. So remember, when you configure it and you close pdfDocs, it writes the configuration to app data docscorp pdfDocs config. So you're going to copy that to your central config location. So you're going to copy the contents of the config file into the central location called pdfDocs_config. So let me show you what that looks like. See it in action. So remember, I just configured pdfDocs. This is my central config. And this is the contents of the config folder. I am going to open this, and I'm just going to copy and paste. So once you install pdfDocs and that configuration is set to this, everyone will get the same configuration. So some configurations are not in the user interface. I just wanted to mention some here. You'll want to reference the administrator's guide for these. So Appendix D, there are some binder settings. So if you're going to be using pdfDocs in binder mode, you may want to define some defaults. The quick access toolbar, the QAT for binder and organizer are different. So if you want to deploy a standard QAT for your organizer or binder, you're going to look for in Appendix D. And then Appendix E has custom pattern searches. You may want to review this if English is not your first language. Also, I'll mention that the XML does accept %username, %variable. Again, you can look in the administrator's guide. There is a section for XML settings. And that is the install configuration of pdfDocs. I hope you found it to be helpful, and have a great day.